And welcome. This is Strong and Sassy on your Superstation Joy 99.7 FM. First of all, let me apologize for the late start, but we're here now, so all is good. My name is Animwaa Anim-Addo, and thank you so much for being here, for choosing to listen to us. We always appreciate you. Absolutely. So, tonight, we're going to be having a bit of a serious conversation, and I'm sure that, you've been following the really tragic story of, our eight men who died a couple of weeks ago. And, you've been watching the news. You probably watched the funeral, heard the tributes and all of that. And the thing about us is we don't like to talk about death, but death is inevitable. At some point in your life, you will lose someone you love. So tonight's show is not about death, but it's about grieving, because we've watched these beautiful, courageous, strong women, stand and read tributes, and you can almost see their hearts breaking, in their eyes. And well, the team and I have been wondering, how do they do it? How are they finding the strength? And so, for everybody out there who is grieving someone that they've lost, tonight's show is dedicated to you. We wanted to talk about grieving well, grieving so you can heal, and also, really importantly, us who are not grieving and how we support those who are grieving. There's been a lot of criticism about how some media outlets have handled the story, have sensationalized some of the things that have happened. And, just the general commentary, the comments, and as a society, how do we really, empathize or stand with people who are grieving in a way that is actually helpful? Because sometimes you want to help someone, but it takes more than just wanting. You know what I mean? Sometimes it actually takes knowing how to. So that's the conversation we're going to have tonight. And I have two beautiful guests who'll be doing this with me tonight. First of all, there's Dr. Evelyn Owusu Roberts. She's a licensed clinical psychologist. And I think I can call Doc a regular now because she's been here so much. So thank you so much, Doc, for joining us. Doc is joining us on
Thank you for
Zoom.
having me.
Oh, hello there. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good too. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And then on Strong and Sassy for the first time is Jahara Mavis Osman. She's a CEO for Premier Rehabilitation Center. Hello, Jahara. Thank you so
Hi.
much for
Hi.
being here.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so let's get straight into it. Doc, let me start with you, right? So, can you just walk us through or talk us through what it's like, those first initial weeks of losing someone you love? Talk us through the emotions, the thoughts, the mindset, and just, paint us a picture of what that's like.
I think when it comes to grief and losing someone, the emotions really diverse. The pain, sometimes the pain, sometimes the thoughts, the I wish I could have, the could I have done anything, the guilt, it's basically an emotional roller coaster that people tend to go through when they lose someone that they love.
Mm.
And the grief and the pain, one way that it can be described is that sometimes it comes in waves. So you have this surging of the emotions, you
Yeah.
are able to calm down, and then it revives itself again. It can be a really difficult time.
Mm. So that's what the first few weeks is like.
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
So
there's a lot of numbing almost at a certain level. Um, even memory, there can even be memory issues that sometimes even go on for an extended period of time because you are living but you don't really understand, like there's very little that you are able to grasp. People will be talking to you, people will be expressing their condolences, but then there's this feeling of is this real, am I here? Is this really happening? So you just go through the motions. People may be talking, you may be nodding, but then really you may be really lost. So sometimes even after a funeral, there might be only glimpses, of things that someone can remember from a funeral.
Yeah.
Someone can say, "Oh, we spoke during the funeral," and they may say, "I can't remember that we spoke. I can't remember
Oh
that
wow.
you were there." So it's because it's such a trauma that happens when you lose someone that is love, and that you love basically. So yeah,
So that's
these
like
are some of the things that tend to happen.
the body's way of dealing with it by kind of like just blanking out completely.
Yes, because everything else becomes too much. And
Hmm.
so what it does is that only tries to keep what is necessary.
Hmm.
Right. So any other information, tends to be basically siphoned out, because the grief and managing the grief, that mental shock, that trauma is so much. It's so much that you can only just sometimes all you can do is just literally breathe.
Hmm.
Sometimes that is the only thing that you can do, because it can be such a shock.
Yeah, it sounds devastating.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Jahara, so Doc has talked about, the first few weeks
Mm-hmm.
of after the trauma of losing someone and the blanking out and all of that. In that period, what are the things that a woman needs the most from the people who have access to her?
I think I would say reassurance, because we all experience grief differently. I have seen some express it immediately.
Hmm.
Like you would see, they would cry, they would shut down. And some people, just like she said, would just go blank because
Hmm.
they don't know how to express their emotion.
Mm-hmm.
So you would think, oh, they're okay, this person is fine. But deep inside, they're holding on to so much emotions that
Hmm.
it's highly difficult for them to express it.
Hmm.
And so we would find out sometimes through therapy that we have people who like become alcoholics. They start to now find meaning in life. They're looking for answers, because imagine you're very close to someone and you watch that person just go in like the matter of seconds. And not only does it make you feel like, not that you're not just going to miss the person, but what I want to say, it reminds you of life. It's not given. It
Hmm.
can be taken away from you anytime.
Hmm.
So in that thinking, it makes you question your own existence. Then
Hmm.
you would find people asking, why are we here? You find people, doing certain things that they would typically not do, because they've lost meaning. They've
Hmm.
lost it. They don't
Yeah.
understand. Like you would find people through therapy asking you that, okay, if I'm struggling, if I'm going to work, I'm doing all this, one day I'm going to die anyway, so why am I
What's the
doing
point?
it?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you move from that stage of crying, burying, to that stage of questioning your existence itself.
Hmm.
And in that space, you need not just therapy, you need family. Because once you begin to question your existence, you begin to lose meaning.
But do you need therapy immediately?
I think that depending on the grieving process, I would say initially therapy is needed. Some people may not initially express anything, but through therapy, they'll be able to understand that the fact that you are not expressing the emotion doesn't mean that the trauma is not in your body.
Hmm.
So you have to understand that, okay, I have trauma and this is what's happened, and you have to be present and aware and dig out the emotion and deal with it. Because some people would hide it, and 2 years down the line, 3 years down the line, they just become
Something
totally
else.
different
Yeah.
people because they didn't seek therapy
Therapy.
immediately.
So when I asked you about therapy, Doc shook her head. So I
Mm-hmm.
think she has a different.
Right.
Doc, do you have a different view on needing therapy immediately?
I do, because I think one of the premises of therapy and needing therapy is that at a certain level it is work, and so there's work that the patient or the client needs to be able to do. And sometimes, if it's too early, they will not be at a place where they can,
Do the work.
you know, yeah, do that work. So I think that is why sometimes just allowing them to, go through their process, and then having family support them. It's I think we can call that a first aid almost. And then if um, over time we see that they are not grieving well, or it's becoming maladaptive, or it is triggering, like she said, maybe some substance use, or it's triggering even some depression, then we can come in to say we need to try to do something about this.
Okay, I think Jahara meant the same thing because she also said some people, depending on the loss or depending on what the grieving situation is,
Right.
you're either able to dive in immediately or you might just need some time to.
Yeah, some people like express emotions immediately, and some people hold it back. And sometimes in the beginning, some people need somebody to talk to.
Yeah,
That's when they're
okay.
asking the why. You would, I wouldn't say that you need therapy, like you need to put them in, but then they need somebody to talk to. And sometimes
Okay.
it's not family.
Okay.
Sometimes these are not friends. They need somebody to open up to,
Help them
especially
to
if the person is
understand.
feeling some sort of guilt. Like imagine you're driving a car with someone and then have an accident. The person, dies and you are alive. Obviously, you're going to feel guilt, and that guilt is not going to come later. It's probably going to
immediate,
be
yeah.
immediate. And if you don't talk to the right person about it, you may trigger some suicidal thoughts, some drug use or something to kind of hide that. So, I mean, death
Depends
is
on
different.
the
Yeah,
situation,
situations
really.
are
Yeah,
very
yeah,
different.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I get that. So, Doc, pretty much on the same thing. So, you've lost someone first few weeks. The people around, sometimes somebody around us loses someone. We don't know what to do with them. They are, just in a different space and carrying more hurt and trauma than we can imagine. How do we, what do we do? Those of us on the periphery, how do we handle those first few weeks after some sort of event like that?
Okay. Okay, so there are a few things we can do. I think we can be there.
Okay.
Our presence. Our presence doesn't necessarily mean that we are sitting with them 24/7. What we can do is just show that we are there, show our presence. So, what that means is that we can check in by phone, we can check in by call. If we are able to be there ourselves to be able to do that, sometimes just sitting in silence, sometimes just maybe and being able to rub someone's back as they cry. Sometimes you don't need too many words. Your presence is enough. Sometimes it can be difficult for such people to maybe eat or feel like eating, so, or even go and try to like cook food. So if you send packages
Yeah.
and care packages, make sure that they can eat something that won't require too much. Not necessarily like you are going to be pounding fufu for the person or anything like that, because sometimes they just need something healthy to nibble on. So these are some of the ways that a person can be
Can be
supported.
supported.
Um,
Right, okay.
mhm.
Jahara, so Doc talks about not needing too many words sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, you do want to say something.
Right.
I find that when people are grieving and the first thing you say to them is, "Oh, you'll be fine, you'll be fine." I find that very invalidating.
Right.
Because I'm not fine. I've just
Right.
lost someone I love. I don't see how I'm going to be fine. So you telling me I'll be fine doesn't really help. But that's
Right.
just my opinion.
Right.
I mean, but in your opinion, when there's a space for words, what are the kind of things that we say? How do we offer words that are going to be meaningful?
I mean, for someone who has lost both parents, like both my mother and father died within 2 years, so it's different. I think when my mother passed away, the grief was very different from my father passing away.
Okay.
I wasn't sure maybe we have experienced it before, so the second time was a lot easier for me.
Okay.
So during my mother's passing, I'd have people talk to me, and most of the time it was just memories. When
Okay.
people are bringing out memories of that person and they think that is how they're going to express the grief to you, it actually triggers more,
Mm.
because like when a person comes in to greet and then, oh, this person, and I used to sit here with them in school, and
Yeah.
then it triggers more. So it's more about being there,
And
just
not
like you
saying much.
say,
Yeah,
not
not
saying
saying
much,
much. Yeah.
because when you're reminding the person of the same thing that is caused the grieving process, it's it's a bit difficult, I think. Like, it's a bit
Right.
difficult for people to share
To share.
memories with you.
You
Yeah.
you know, I think it's interesting when you're trying to go through grief with someone, because everyone is different.
Right.
Because you know how you are talking about the fact that somebody would come up to you and share a memory and it
Mm-hmm.
would make you sad.
Right.
I remember when my dad died,
Mm-hmm.
when people came up to me and shared their memories,
Mm-hmm.
it made me feel like he wasn't forgotten. You know what I
Oh.
mean? Like, immediately he died, there
Mm-hmm.
were so many stories and so many people, oh my
Right.
God, and it actually made me feel like, oh wow,
Mm-hmm.
he's not going to be. It comforted
Like
me
people like
sharing the
recognize,
memories. Yeah,
right.
so it's, for me, it's interesting that the opposites.
For
Do you get
me,
what
it
I
was
mean?
it
Yeah, it
was
was
bringing out emotions,
emotion.
and
Yeah.
because I would always picture what the
Mm.
person would say.
Would
So in
say
that picturing it, I'm still picturing the person, and then
alive
that
and
minute I become aware that the person is not alive. So it kind of triggered that emotion
that.
of,
Yeah, I
like,
get
you're
that. Yeah, yeah,
reminding me
yeah,
of it.
yeah.
When we were doing the funeral proceedings were going on, there were people who would say, oh, I used to be here with that person, I used to be here with that person, which to them were kind words, but
Yeah.
that could trigger, like, an
Oh
emotion in the family
wow.
member, like you would
That,
not,
yeah, 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 yeah.
you
It's
can.
just so interesting. So I mean, really, grieving is deeply personal and very different
Yes.
for everyone,
Yes.
which is very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Doc. So there's a lady that I follow on social media, and a few months ago, I think about a year ago or so, she lost her husband, and she posted quite recently that when somebody sees her in public and she's smiling or she's laughing, please don't offer condolences. Please don't bring it up. Just let me have that minute of joy, or whatever it is that I'm having. And I couldn't relate to it, maybe because I haven't known that kind of grief,
Mm-hmm.
but I think the question that I want to ask Doc is that, how are we, again, on the outside, how do we judge, that space between wanting to offer, our love or our condolences or our memory? How do we judge whether we should do that, or whether we should just hold space for whatever emotion the person is feeling at the moment? You know what I mean? Because she made a public post and she did say, when you see me somewhere and I'm laughing and I'm smiling, I'm in the moment, please don't come up to me and say, I'm so sorry for your loss, because
Mm-hmm.
all you're doing is taking me. So how do you know? Because you may see someone and you want to hug them, you want to reach out. How do you judge? Okay, should I not? Should I?
Yes, and especially if that person is someone who maybe this might be that you may have heard about it and you may not have been able to be at the funeral,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden you see this person, and so you just want to express your condolences. I
Mm.
think for me, usually I feel like the best way to go is if you are able to meet someone's need. So, for example, she has expressed her need,
Yeah.
and I think that that is great, because not a lot of people are able to express what
Express
they
what they
need when
need.
it comes to grief, because usually we have to guess what they need, right? So then I feel like any opportunity for someone who is grieving to say, this is how you can support me, I feel like I'm all for that, because then the person can know how to support you, because now you have expressed that this is what I want.
Yeah.
So I feel like that becomes a really good thing.
Okay. Okay, Jahar, do you have a take on how to judge, whether to offer condolences or
Mm-hmm.
to bring up memories? How do you know what to do?
I mean, there there have been situations where I have seen someone grieving and then I pull back,
Mm-hmm.
just giving them time, not because I don't care, but I want them to know I'm there. But then I don't want them to feel like, sometimes I felt like that with my mom. And, thanks to all the people who reached out and everything. But at some point, it became like everybody was being pity for me. And I didn't
Okay.
like that.
Okay.
So for me, it wasn't about not checking on me, but feeling that feeling of like you're feeling pity for me, you're feeling sorry for me
Yeah, yeah, I
became
get that. Yeah.
overwhelming.
Yeah.
And everybody's doing this on a different note. So they don't realize how collectively,
It's a
how many
lot.
people are sending you messages and like even like you feel guilty for not even responding because you're already in that
Swamped.
space
Yeah,
already.
yeah.
So for me, I just think there's sometimes subtle ways, but if you feel the person needs you, you would feel it. Like if you're
Mm.
expressing your feelings to someone and you can tell the person really wants you to be there, you can
Yeah.
tell it. But when you sense that the person just wants to be left alone,
You just leave them
it's just
alone.
the kindest thing to do is to leave
To
them
leave them
alone.
alone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Doc, is it different depending on who you lose? The grief.
Please come again.
I was asking that is the grief different depending on who you lose? I mean, Jahara shared that when she lost her mom and her dad within 2 years, but the feelings were different. But is it different when you lose your mom? Is it a different kind of, obviously to some extent, yeah, but a different kind of pain when you lose your husband or when you lose a child or when you I think what I'm trying to ask is, are some more painful than some?
Hmm. So I think yes, there are certain losses that are more painful, and it all depends on the relationship as
Mm.
well. So take somebody who loses maybe their father, and they didn't have much of a relationship with them. Maybe the father didn't even look after that person. So then when we are looking at that kind of relationship, or let's say the father was even like an abusive father, this kind of loss doesn't tend to be as deep as maybe someone that you really had a close loving relationship with. So I think those things tend to happen, and I think it really is also different, when you look at the individual too as well.
Okay.
So for example, sometimes if you have had a loss before, the second time it happens, you tend to be used to it. It's really interesting seeing old people at funerals. Like once you observe them,
Mm.
because it's like they've been to their funerals over and over and over again, and
Yeah.
sometimes it's like, oh, they're just this acceptance of this is what happens with life. We
Mm.
live, and then we die,
Yeah.
and so yeah, it can really be
Be
a unique
different depending
experience.
on
But
who.
then back to your previous question too, I was also thinking about the whole idea of emotional intelligence.
Okay.
It does require a bit of emotional intelligence to know what someone might need and might not need. Being able to read their non-verbals, all of these things can help you know how to be there for somebody who is grieving, and to kind of take a cue to see what they would appreciate from you and what they might not appreciate from you.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I think we focused a lot on how to support somebody who's grieving. So now let's talk about the people who are actually grieving. So again, let me start with you, Doc. And we've kind of touched on when to start therapy, and all of that, depending on the kind of loss that is presented with. But what is the process? I would say what are the timelines, but I know we can't really put timelines to grieving. But what are the, I don't know, clinically acceptable timelines within which you should expect some sort of emotional movement? So maybe within 3 months, how should the person be feeling? How should they be acting? 6 months, 12 years? When do we start getting worried about certain behaviors? That's like 10 questions in one. I know, I'm really sorry. But we can take it one at a time. And of course, Jahara, if at any point in time you can interject as well. So Doc, just walk us through that.
Okay. So I think as psychologists, one of the things we tend to want to focus on is the whole idea of how you are functioning.
Okay.
After the grief. So that becomes more of a marker than time. Of course, if so we look at that and we look at time too. So we want to look at your functioning. So there has been a loss. Maybe it's now 6 months, it's now a year past the loss. Are you still able to function? Are you still able to go to work? Are you able to eat? Are you able to do the things that you need to do? Or are you basically in a catatonic state? Are you losing your job? Are you losing your identity, who you are?
Yeah.
If you have kids you have to look after, are you neglecting them? Are you now incapable of taking care of your children if you have to take care of your children? So we look at how you are functioning.
Doc, can I ask you a question? Sorry to interrupt. Just want to ask you a question on what you're saying. So, I mean, for example, if you suddenly lose your husband, right? You have a picture in your mind of what your life is going to look like, right? Husband, kids, 5-year plan, 10-year plan, 20-year plan. Now, suddenly this man is dead. I mean, is it not reasonable that I would lose my identity? Like, I don't know who I am because suddenly the whole plan has changed. So again, what are the reasonable, because you talk about, okay, is the person functioning or are they in a catatonic state? So question is, how long are they allowed to be in a catatonic state? Because obviously, they do need some, because now I have to figure out my whole life all over again. You know what I mean? So I mean, when you're giving us the examples, if you could also give us the reasonable timelines within which we don't need to worry about somebody being depressed or somebody not wanting to bath or eat or any of that.
Yeah. So I mean, this is also something that we are still kind of researching on.
Okay.
To be honest. So it's really something that you have to take on a case-by-case basis, right? So for adults, sometimes we look at a year. So a year, but then we are also looking not just at the length of time, we are looking at the level of functioning and how severe the level of functioning has fallen.
Okay.
Right. So it's one thing if maybe you haven't bathed for a week or 2 weeks, but if it gets to the stage where you are basically a catatonic state, which is you are just basically just in bed. You are not eating, you are not, like, it's like almost like you are in a coma, basically. So there we need a little bit of help, we need a little bit of support, and when it comes to that level, because then that's really significant.
Okay.
When you are looking at your functioning. Because there's sometimes, here's the thing, when it comes to some of the other mental health conditions that we have, stress can trigger a condition that you already have, which may be dormant, which you may have already been recovering from. Okay. Right. So what that means is that something like a loss, grief, if you have schizophrenia, have the tendency to have schizophrenia, for example, which is a psychotic disorder, right? And part of having a psychotic disorder, there is a symptom of catatonia, okay, right? So then we need to be able to make sure that this is grief and this is not a triggering of a psychotic disorder now. A severe psychotic disorder now, or this is grief and this is not now getting into depression, because a severe state of depression too can also lead to. So it's really looking at being able to decipher what is going on, and by assessing, okay, this grief is this grief that we can, given the situation, because we always need to know context. Context is important, okay, right? So we take it on a case-by-case basis. We look at your function, we look at the duration, we look at history, right? We look at your coping, and then we can then look at, okay, we'll allow this to continue, or we need to start doing something differently right now.
Okay. So Jahara, did you experience any of this, when you lost your parents? Was there a period when you couldn't do anything?
Well, just like I said before, I think we all express
grieve differently.
emotions
Yeah.
and grief in different ways. And especially for us women, women tend to be more emotional. So you would see in women rather than men holding in a lot. But I would say that there is, just like Dr. Evelyn said, there is something about functioning when a person is going through like maybe some mental health issues. Some people can just get up in the morning, shower, go to work, come back. You would think everything is fine. So one day, something, they just commit suicide or do something, and then you wonder, you ask yourself, everybody's like, this person, it's
Seems
fine.
so
I saw her yesterday. She was doing well. There's nothing wrong. So sometimes I always say when we are dealing with people, like talking, like for me, when if I have a, since I went through it, if I have a friend who's had a loss, the first thing I tell them is, do you want to talk? Do you want to talk about it? Do you want to talk about it? Because there are some things that they don't know how to talk about, and it may be the grief is triggering some kind of guilt, in them. Or imagine like, a parent losing a child,
Yeah.
you know, they'll feel guilty, not because they did something to the child, but it's like, why am I alive and this younger
Child,
person has to go?
yeah.
Unlike, let's say your parent or your mother is like
Who's
90
really
years
old.
old
Yeah,
and
yeah,
she
yeah,
dies
yeah.
because now you've accepted that, she can. So I think that it's different. Just like I said before, I felt two
Differently
different
about,
kinds of grief, and the first time was very difficult, but the second time was a lot easier, and I was functioning. I was going to work. I'm still going to work. I come back because I have responsibilities, so I don't have like the luxury of just shutting down. But then the shutting down can be trapped in the body, like a trauma that you're not willing to express. So this is when a person can just like, be going around and not knowing what is causing their emotions. Like, at some point you just get angry. Like, you just, someone does something very small, you get so upset, and then you finish and you sit there and ask yourself, why did I get so angry? But the thing is, you are not identifying what is causing your anger because you've tried to like shut it down and pretend it doesn't exist because you don't want to deal with it. But your body is going to deal with it in some way when you're not even aware of it. So I think, just a person functioning after, going through a loss, it's not like guarantee that, the person is fine. Sometimes they need somebody to dig out
what's actually going on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that makes sense. Doc, so do you want to continue? Do you remember the questions? There were so many. I'm hoping you remember them because I don't. I just know I've asked you a lot of questions.
Right.
I just remember they were like 10 in one.
Wow, but
And,
you don't remember them, right? Okay. I think we talked about timelines, expectations and timelines. And I think you gave us a certain sense of normalcy may not return till after about a year, if I'm correct from what you said. But also that there's still some research going on, so we don't really know. And it's difficult to
Yes,
put numbers on.
yes, and we also have children, grief that occurs amongst children.
Okay.
That's also something that we have to look at as well. So I think for children, we tend to look at more of a 6 month, range to see how they are doing. And we also want to look at their function. So sometimes, because of trauma, some of the things that we notice is that there might be a regression in some of the developmental milestones that have been achieved. So a child who is maybe hasn't been sucking their thumb for ages now all of a sudden they are sucking their thumb. And maybe they have bedwetting when they have been potty trained. All of these things were things that we kind of check for when we looking at trauma or grief when it comes to children.
Okay. So the I'm just looking on the poster for the show, and the title of the show is supposed to be women really need when grieving.
Mm.
So I think the last 10 minutes or so, yeah, the last 10 minutes of the show, I think we should really just talk about that, about what women really need. Um, I know we've picked at it, a little bit and all of that, but let me start with Jahar on this one. But what do we really need? I mean, so for example, with these new widows, eight beautiful women, who woke up one day and their whole lives have been turned upside down.
Mm-hmm.
What do they need? What can we do?
Well, I think the first thing that we we, we ought to understand about women are, I mean, nature made us a little softer, so we tend to harbor a lot of emotions. And imagine like you're going through this emotion, and then you have to deal with your children too, because if the widow is grieving, not only is she crying because she lost her husband, but
But
now
yeah,
she has to grieve for the children too, because
who've lost
now
their
she would,
father. Yeah.
it's difficult for her to even understand what the child is experiencing. Some children would just be numb, some would not talk, even to a point where if you are the parent and you feel yourself struggling so much, you ask yourself, what would the child go through?
Mm.
So I think for women, the I think the emotional needs during grieving, and how to also grieve for the children, or how to handle
Handle the
both
children,
the loss of a husband, and
the
having
father.
to deal with the
Yeah.
children. Because imagine like you're with your husband and he plays a certain role
Yeah.
in the household, and you play a certain role, and then now the person is no longer there, so you have to immediately switch into super mother mode, like, because you have
Yeah.
to be the father and the mother. And sometimes the finances may not be even be there for a
Mm.
woman, like a homemaker, a housewife who probably never had to work, and immediately loses the husband. It's not only like worrying about her grief,
Yeah.
but
But
how is she
also,
going to
yeah.
go
Yeah.
about switching her emotions from grieving to getting up and going to find a job or doing something to now take care of the children,
Yeah.
so it's something that for me personally, uh with my charity that I do, I always say that you don't need money to be able to hear people say kind words or listen to
Mm.
you. And sometimes some people do not have the money to like go to the to seek therapy. Like, it's not even like they don't want, it's like there's no money to do that. And so when I started the foundation, i um I, I tend to work with more women and children, and most of the time you would have a woman coming with the children. They are the ones that usually can afford to pay for it. And so I would say, yeah, we should definitely focus on not just the mother but the children, and
But the
how she'll be
children.
able to manage grieving for both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For both of them.
Yeah.
Doc, I've realized that a lot of times, or I've seen that a lot of times, especially when women lose their husbands and there are young children involved, the tendency is to send the young children away. So sometimes, if they can, fly them, outside to an auntie, kind of remove them from all of that initial drama and all of that. Is that a good thing for the child? How much, as women, how much exposure to grief must we give our children? Should they be part of the process, or should we try to protect them as much as possible?
Um, it really depends on the age of the child, and how aware they may be of what's going on. So at a certain level, so for example,
Mm.
and one of the schools that I kind of consult with, there was a child in fourth grade who passed away, and um, she was in class, so everyone kind of knew that this was what had happened. Um, there was a question about whether to allow the children to go to the funeral or not. But then what we decided to do at the end is to acknowledge that, like in the ceremony, that was a little bit more controlled, so saying a prayer, talking a little bit about her and then releasing some balloons, right? So sometimes, once a child knows that there's been a loss, we can't, at a certain level, depending on their age of awareness, we can't pretend that they don't know, right? What we can do is try to help them how to facilitate the grieving process and the understanding of loss, right? So that it doesn't become something overly traumatizing, So there's the way we need to facilitate that. Now, sometimes the mother may not be in the condition to do that. But we may have to look at wherever it is that the child is sent to, they should be able to facilitate that, right? And not make it seem like, well, it's a new life now, nothing has happened, especially if they are aware, because with children, depending on their age, you will not necessarily see the grief expressed through their emotion. They may not be emotionally intelligent enough to be able to express, but you will see it in their behavior. You will see that there are some behavioral changes, and that's what must also be looked out for as well. So I will say that attend to the grief. If a mother is not in the state where she can do that, then whoever the child is sent to must just be on the lookout to see what they may be able to do to also support the child through the grief, because the child will be grieving.
Right. Okay. So I think last question. I asked Jahara, so she gave us her answer, but let me ask you too. So what do women really need when they're grieving?
Okay. So to answer that question, we first need to be able to understand the makeup of a woman. So when we are looking at the makeup of a woman, we know that we are made up of our physical, mental, emotional, and then social, and then even our spiritual needs, right? So then these are areas where you can meet the need of a woman who is grieving. So either her physical needs, her mental needs, her emotional needs, her social needs, and her spiritual needs. Right. So whoever you feel you can meet a need, I think that is going to be something that will be helpful. If you're able to meet all of it, then it's great. But if you're able to meet some of it, that's also something that would be important. But first of all, let's understand the different aspects or the different opportunities that we have to be able to meet the need of a woman who is going through a period of loss.
Wow, it sounds like a lot, right? I guess if you really want to be helpful, then it's not really about saying, "Oh, I'm sorry." It actually takes a lot more. It actually takes a lot more. Okay, so Jahara, last thing for you, because our time is up.
Okay.
You've lost your parents, so pain and grief. What was the thing that helped you the most in the whole process? What are some of the things that helped you to heal, to feel like yourself again, to find joy, and just be able to continue to strive forward?
I think for someone who is in the mental space and mental health, I kind of took notice of my behaviors, but I didn't want to force to stop anything. If I was going to cry, I would cry. If I was going to have to take time off, I did. But what I focused more of being aware of the emotion rather than trying to stop it. So then with time, I became aware of, okay, this is what it is, but this is not you're feeling this emotion, but this emotion is not present. So sometimes I tell myself, okay, if I feel sad, my mom is no longer here. I tell myself, if she was here, she wouldn't want me sitting here crying. She would want me going out and hanging with my friends and doing, things that would make me happy. So let me go up and do that because she would never want to see me sitting here
Yeah.
crying.
Yeah.
So that was some kind of encouragement I would give myself to get up
Okay.
and go do things.
Yeah.
Because as much as we miss and we grieve, we should always think that those people wouldn't want us to be in that
State.
state. Yes.
So for you, that's the major thing. That
Yes,
happened. You see
that's-
friends, family.
Well, I had friends and family speak to me, but just like I told you, like a lot of the speaking was just only triggering memories.
So you grieved alone. You're more of a loner.
Yes, I would say,
I can see
I would
that you're-
say like
you're
I like
more
to
of
be
a
more
loner
of aware of my
yourself.
yes, because imagine like a few of my friends were like, Jahari, why didn't you invite us to the funeral? And in my head, I'm like, yeah, you're only coming to say sorry. It's not gonna bring her back.
Wow.
So I mean, that's why initially I said we all grieve differently.
Differently,
So
yes.
once you are aware of what the person needs, then you can provide it. But
yeah.
sometimes the stories become too sorry.
much, yeah.
know.
I think you're different. Yeah, you're just very, very different. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for
so
having
much
me.
for coming. This has been Strong and Sassy. My name is Animwaa Anim-Addo, and I've had Dr. Evelyn Owusu Roberts and Jahara Mavis Osman joining me tonight. We've had a conversation about grief, and I hope that if you're listening and you're grieving, this helped you. And if you're listening and there's someone close to you who's grieving, you kind of know how to support them a bit better. That's what we've tried to do tonight. So thank you so much for staying tuned in. Thank you to the team for all of the support. Anita, Maribel, Oliver. We're handing over to the news team for the 8 o'clock news. But we'll be back next week, Wednesday, God willing. So you stay safe out there and see ya.